Greetings, my dear viewers. It is I, Drayon, and welcome back to Dungeons & Dragons Character Concept, where we take a look at the lore of different races and see what different types of character concepts we can make out of those races by pairing them up with backgrounds and classes that best fit with that lore. And today's a weird one, as it is quite literally, in the case of lore, new. It is a new race. In the Forgotten Realms, this is a brand new race according to the lore. The Verdan. These are goblinoids that aren't goblinoids. Their whole thing is confusing, and I must say, they are interesting as far as lore goes, but they are still rather confusing. The Verdan are goblinoids, goblins and hobgoblins that were traveling around in the Underdark and came into contact with a being known as That Which Endures. And just by having a shadow cast over these goblinoids, they begin to change. That Which Endures is a being of entropy, chaos incarnate. And so, when it made contact with the Verdan, their whole biological structure changed. They start out between 2 and 3 feet tall. No, 3 and 4 feet tall. They are considered a small race. At level 5, or once they get older, they grow 2 feet rapidly, and according to the lore, painfully. And they become a medium-sized race. So they go from 3 to 4 feet to roughly 5 to 6 feet overnight, practically when they hit puberty. So, that's something to think about when making your character, is that they start out as a small race. So if you go to level 4 and grab the squat nimbleness feat, you can legally get it since you are a small race. Once you hit level 5, you'll be a medium-sized race with a feat meant for small races, which is hilarious. A hilarious concept in my mind, just cheating the system a little bit. But the Verdan are subject to a lot of mutation, not just their height. They can change skin color, they can change eye color, hair color, even their ears change size, which has been noted that when this happens, the Verdan will sort of bundle their ears back into like a ponytail hairstyle. So that's interesting. It's a nice cultural thing that they've added. Now, not every Verdan will mutate in the same way, even if they are part of the same genetic line. Each mutation is unique to the Verdan. And not only will they change height, skin color, eye color, they will also sometimes change gender, which could be a jab at a certain group of people. I've talked about this with the changelings, but Verdan really don't have a choice in the matter. Unlike the changelings who can choose to change form, the Verdan don't have a choice. They mutate seemingly at random. Or at least whenever That Which Endures finds it hilarious to do so. And this does make Verdan a bit strange for character builds. because you don't exactly know what you want and possibly even what you're going to get. Now, it is said that Verdan are easy to trust, but they do have the ability to discern deception. So that's something to think about when building your character. And a lot of other races actually do get along with the Verdan, since there is not much tying their racial history to the other races, other than, goblins. But they don't seem to really care about that. Anywho, let's go ahead and talk about the possible backgrounds and classes that a Verdan might take. Anthropologist, far traveler, and outlander will probably be the most common, though I think that the better two would be faceless and secret identity, since you are looking at not only a change in your looks, but a possible change in your identity, who you are as a person, as a Verdan. As far as classes go, I would say that Bard, Clerics, and Wizards would probably be the most common among the Verdan race. So, with that being said, what combinations would be suitable for a Verdan? Let's go ahead and take a deeper look into each of the classes and find which subclasses would best fit a Verdan. Starting things off with the Artificer, the first thing that came to mind when thinking of Artificer and a Goblinoid was the Forge Adept, which can be found in Exploring Eberron. And that is because one of the abilities mentions that the ability name comes from a goblin word. That's really it. It's just a word from the Goblinoid language for the Forge Adept, which kind of made sense to me, since the Verdan seem to be a Goblinoid race. But that's really it. So let's go ahead and move on to Bard. And the two that made sense to me for a Bard at college was Lore and Whispers, simply for something I forgot to mention earlier, is that the Verdan have a telepathy. They have some telepathy. So, yeah, having a psionic connection sort of makes sense. So we went with the College of Whispers as one of our choices, simply for that psionic connection. Lore, just because the Verdan like to learn. So having lore made sort of sense, and it was kind of ironic since the Verdan don't really have their own lore, because their racial past was forgotten after being touched by that which endures. Moving on to Clerics, speaking of that which endures, there are no domains of entropy. I saw on Twitter that someone mentioned the death domain might have a connection to entropy. I don't really see it, but I went ahead and listed it anyway. Mind for that psionic connection made sense to me, and then there is beauty. And this one made sense to me since the Verdan will travel and see the beauty of the world. And that's really all I can think of when it comes to the Verdan. Nothing else truly made sense for them. Moving on to Druid, the only one that truly made sense to me was the Circle of the Shepherd, since you can summon creatures that have minor changes from their original counterparts. Now, I could also see Circle of the Land, but since they are travelers, I didn't know which one made the most sense. Next is Monk, monastic tradition for the Cobalt Soul, Shadow, and Soul Knife made sense to me. Shadow for that connection for that which endures, being an entropy-based being. Cobalt Soul just made some sort of sense. They are more of the intuitive monk class. And then again, Soul Knife for that psionic connection. Moving on to Rogue. We have Inquisitive, Mastermind, and Soul Knife. Inquisitive and Mastermind for more of those talkative individuals. And again, Soul Knife for that connection to psionics. Next is Sorcerer, the Aberrant Mind, and Wild Magic Origins made the most sense for the Verdan. At least in my mind. Since we are talking about that which endures, being a being of entropy, a being of chaos. Having some chaos in the mix from Wild Magic just made sense. Next is Warlock. The only one that I thought would be appropriate would be the patron of the Great Old One, since, pardon, there is no other connection that I could find for the being that is known as that which endures. And finally, for our wizard, the Order of Scribes and Transmutation made the most sense to me, since they both deal with changing... Pardon. They both deal with changing things, either changing the effect of the spell, or just changing another being or object. This seemed to make the most sense for a Goblinoid touched by a being of entropy. And with that being said, that is all I have time for you today. What did you think? What type of Verdan characters would you make? Let me know down in the comment section below. And with that being said, this has been Drehon, and I am offline.